My countrymen, this is Ragen Velez Pamatong, President of the Republic of the Philippines. And tonight, once again, I have come to address paramount issues confronting the country today. When the news about coronavirus hit the headlines several months ago, and I was informed by news reports that it could kill about 70% of mankind. I researched on pandemics in the past. I wanted to search for guidelines on what to do with pandemics and how dangerous are pandemics to humankind. I found out that many years ago, in a past almost lost in memory, about 90% of the native Indians, 90%, about 300 million native Indians perished because of smallpox. And this killer smallpox was so dangerous that I think it just died by itself, but it brought with it more than 300 million native Indians, excluding the whites that were also victims of smallpox. And I researched deeper and deeper. I came to a point where I read what the Americans did to the leprosy pandemics of 1907. With a capital of $50, the American government created a colony at the northern tip of Palawan. $50. They gathered all the people sick of leprosy or afflicted with leprosy all over the Philippines and gathered them in one island, colony. And once they were all gathered in one island, the leprosy stopped in 99.99% of the Philippines. And so, because that was successful, Ellis Island in New York was also reduced into a leprosy colony. Ellis Islands. Ellis Island and Angels Island in San Francisco. At the same time, other islands like Sipalonga Island in Greece was also transformed into a leprosy island. There were other countries that followed: India, Afghanistan, I think China, and that solved the leprosy problem by just simply segregating the sick ones, those who were afflicted, in one area and setting the rest of the country, 99% of the country, free from leprosy. And so I thought it was a good idea. That's why I came out with one island quarantine. And I proposed that to our government, but our government did not listen. I think because of pride, they could not accept the idea that a nuisance candidate offered a formula that can solve COVID or coronavirus in the Philippines. But the other countries like Australia, New Zealand, Indonesia, Maldives, Chile, Algeria, and many others, small countries in the whatever kind of locations is that, the small islands in America, they followed my suggestions, and most of them, or if not all of them, became COVID-free, including Vietnam. So that is what happened. Many countries followed, and those who followed my suggestion were COVID-free up to now. There are only small cases of COVID reported. But the Philippines, my country, refused to follow up to now. But I cannot give up on this formula because I know it will work. I'm very sure it will work. I bet my life on it. I volunteer to be shot at Luneta if it does not work, given the chance to implement my one island quarantine area. I volunteer to be shot at Luneta. That is how much I believe in my cause. Again, to repeat, many countries were saved by my proposal, which is not really mine because I copied that from the Americans. The countries in many parts of Europe, in Caribbean areas, small countries, they were freed or liberated from the COVID terrorism, if I may use the word terrorism. So it's very dangerous for the impact of smallpox in America, like 300 million. Well, if that hit the Philippines, we'll all be wiped out because we're only about 110 million. And that killed 300 million. And we are only about 108 to 110 million. And so I came out with this proposal, this 7-day proposal. I said, in 7 days, if I am given the chance, I can wipe out COVID from the face of the Philippines. At least control it. And I will just simply repeat what America did in 1907 with a capital of $50. Gather all COVID positives all over the country, 99% of the country, get the COVID positives in 99% of the country, put them in Palawan, or if Palawan cannot accommodate them, in Marindoque, in 2 islands. And once they are all placed there, then the whole Philippines can be declared COVID-free, business as usual. I published it for about a couple of months. Even up to now, I keep on publishing this chart on how to liberate the Philippines from COVID terrorism, lockdown. We're being locked down for the positives are only about 1% of the population. The 99.9% of the population who are negatives and free from COVID are being punished for the affliction of about 1% of 1%. And so I published this, and I proposed Palawan. And later on, I also proposed an additional island of Marinduque. Now, I proposed Palawan because Palawan has 3 airports, international airport like the Puerto Princesa International Airport, the San Vicente Airport, and the El Nido Leo Airport. So 3 airports in Palawan where we can take our people there by plane, by air. And in Marinduque, we have Lucena Airport. Oh, that's neighboring airport. In Marinduque itself, we have Marcoper Airport and Marinduque Airport. So we can take our COVID positives to Marinduque and Palawan by air. You know, an idea is good is if the idea works. An idea, no matter how good, but it does not work, well, it's bad because it does not work. It's a good idea, but it does not work. An idea is good only if it works, if it can be implemented with practicality. And I know the one island quarantine area, in spite of the fact that we are 7,100 island, can be implemented with practicality. It can be implemented easily. We can take our, how many patients do we have? More or less, we have 375,000 coronavirus afflicted persons in the Philippines. 375,000. About 6,000 died already. About 6,000 died. 375,000 are afflicted right now. Let's put it at 400,000, round figure, 400,000. Can that be taken safely to Palawan or to Marinduque at the same time? Yes. By plane, we can resort to air, land, and sea approach to the problem. By air, we can maybe have, it will take about 1 to 2 days to bring all the 375,000 to Palawan and to Marinduque. Because you know what? We have 312 planes. I counted 312 airlines. I mean, 4 major airlines with 312 planes. And it can take, just by one trip, it can take about 60 to 70,000 one trip. If we use all the airlines, we can use martial law to force these airlines to cooperate, because we can do that under martial law. We can use these 312 planes, which can take about 70,000 one trip to Palawan and to Marinduque, and it will take about 5 to 6 trips, maybe 1 day or 1.5 days. They will all be there. In 1.5 days to 2 days at most, the Philippines will be COVID-free. There will be no COVID in 6 days. That's maximum. So by air, we can do that. The Philippine Airlines has about 61 planes. The Cebu Pacific has 71 planes. The Asia Air Group has 176 aircraft. We have 5 C-130 of the Philippine Armed Forces. And yeah, we have 4 major airlines plus the Philippine Air Force. So we have in all, to repeat, 312 planes. Using air alone, we can transport them in 5 to 6 days. In 5 to 6 days, there will be no COVID-afflicted person in the Philippines. 5 to 6 days. That's why I keep on publishing this. The risk of sounding like, a broken record, I keep on publishing this Facebook, that it is the only way that if we follow the Pamatong One Island Quarantine, this chart here, which I also made for the Philippines and for the world and for the United States, COVID will be gone forever, at least be controlled forever in the Philippines. That is by plane. By plane, we can do that in 1.5 days, at most 2 days. What are the other transportation that we can use? We have 140,000 buses. 140,000 buses. We have 21 taxis, 21,000 taxis, 1.2 million private cars. So this 1,400 buses, 21,000 taxis, and 1.2 million private cars can take a passenger just by one trip alone of 11 million, about 11 to 12 million can be accommodated by our land transportation. We only have 375,000 COVID-afflicted persons in the Philippines. Now our land transportation system can take about 11 to 12 million. We have about 140,000 buses. We have 21,000 taxis, and we have 1.2 million private cars. We can use these public-private cars. We can use this when public safety demands. We can use that under the Constitution. And so we have by land, by air, by land, and we can also take them by sea. Because we have about 202 vessels, ships that can transport these patients, the COVID-afflicted persons, to Marinduque and Palawan. We have about 202 vessels. One trip can take 540,609 passengers. 540,000 to 6,000 passengers. Just one trip, using all these 202 vessels. And you remember, we only have 375,000 COVID-afflicted persons. And our ships, ships can take about 540,000 passengers. So one trip by sea, one trip by 6 trips by air, and one trip by land. We have more than enough to implement this without spending billions. Because we can force these companies to spend on their own for the sake of the country, to save the country. We don't have to pay for the gasoline. They will have to pay for that because the situation demands that they pay for that. And so the existing budget for the Department of Health and other departments related to the control of this pandemic can be used. We don't have to ask Congress to earmark or allocate more money than 800 billion already. That's too much. That's corruption in action. Because 800 billion cannot be, I think it cannot be accounted for. Well, they have false accounting, I know. They have a lot of crazy accountants, corrupted accountants. But we don't need 800 billion. We only need cooperation by the airlines, by the land transportation industries, and by the private car owners and taxi owners. Cooperation, that is what is needed. And cooperation can be forced through martial law, temporary martial law, where public safety can be a justification for forcing them to lend us their ships, their planes, and their cars by force. And of course, we can shoulder a part of the expenses involved in transforming the patients from one point to another. So again, if you ask me if it is practical to transport the patients from different points of the Philippines to Palawan and to Marinduque, I'll tell you it can be. Now, what is the problem? Ano bang problema? The problem is Digong will not implement it. And so I revised my decree, executive decree. I signed it, and I want Digong, I am asking him to co-sign the decree. Once Digong co-signs the decree, that's it. COVID will be gone forever, at least controlled forever in the Philippines. All that you have to do, Mayor Duterte, is to co-sign this document. This is a historic document. This is an historic document. It will go down the ages. And if you refuse to sign this, you will be blamed for the deaths of thousands of Filipinos in the Philippines. Because you refuse to sign a decree that could have saved the thousands of lives in the Philippines, hopefully not all the Filipinos. Like what happened to the native Indians, where 300 million, about 90% of the Indians died. Now we can all die because of your refusal to sign. Just sign this. And once you sign this, your secretary, your members of the cabinet don't have to prepare it. I prepared it for you. I prepared it for the Philippines and the Filipino people. Kayo mga Filipino na nakinig sa akin, prepared ko na yan. In fact, I have about 50 executive decrees na kung pirmahan ni Rodrigo Duterte, mawala na yung mga major problems sa Pilipinas kung pirmahan. Ang problema dito sa atin ngayon, yung pride. Yung pride. Ayaw nila talagang ang credit pupunta sa akin. E wala tayong magawa diyan kasi nagagaling sa akin yung idea. Binigay sa akin ni Bathala yung idea. At sinulat ko at ino-offer ko sa bansa. Ang kailangan lang ang signature ni Duterte. Kasi maski hindi siya totoong presidente, he is the de facto president, meaning to say in control. Ako de jure lang. Legal president pero walang kapangyarihan. Kaya kailangan yung signature niya. So to repeat, Mayor Rudy Duterte, you prefer to be called mayor, so I will call you mayor anyway because you're mayor anyway. You're a mayor anyway. You sign this. You sign this, and COVID will be completely controlled forever in the Philippines. Other countries that followed my idea, which I also copied from America, are now COVID-free. Maldives, New Zealand, Australia, Algiers, Indonesia, Vietnam, the Caribbean Islands, they are free. Tayo ang pinakataas na may COVID affliction. Yung kahapon, and the other day, I had ear infection, kaya nga hindi ako naka-record. Pumunta ako sa hospital, makita ko talagang tortured ang mga tao. Lahat, parang mga ninja. Puro naka-mask. Hindi naman kailangan eh. Tanggalin yung, kung anong cause dyan, yung affected, yung positives. Tanggalin ang positives. Lagay sa Marinduque, lagay sa Palawan. Wala na tayong mask. Kung mayroong suspect dyan, dalhin ka agad sa Marinduque, dalhin ka agad sa Palawan. Mawala yung suspect. Business as usual. Ganun lang kasimpol. Bakit itong mga tao na ito hindi gumagalaw? Siguro, posible dahil Duterte is more busy taking care of his disease, his cancer, than the cancer of the society. Dalawa yung cancer. Cancer sa corruption, cancer niya, personal cancer, and national cancer. Dalawa yung cancer na hinaharap niya. And so, Rudy, there are times in life when you have to humble yourself because it means survival for the country. Unless you meant what you say na gusto mong papatay ng 6 million tulad ni Hitler. This is one of the best means to kill people na hindi masyadong halata. Yung mga police ginamit mo to kill more than 30,000, halata eh. Ito talagang hindi halata. Kung talaga yun ang gusto mo, well, this is the best way to kill 6 million without being directly blamed for it. But history will pass judgment on you. When today shall become a living part of yesterday, and people look back at this moment, at this point in history, makita nila na ikaw ang dahilan bakit namatay yung 1,700. Personally, binaril mo sa ulo yung iba. Pinakain mo sa buhaya yung iba. Pinatay mo through the PNP, yung more than 30,000 through Tukhang. And marami pang namamatay. And ngayon, through COVID, 375,000 ang afflicted. And more than 300,000, something like that ang namatay. Marami nang namatay. Maraming afflicted. Kunti lang mag-survive dyan. And kung hindi natin makontrol dito, kasi we are not controlling it anyway, at talagang siguro mas marami pang mamatay sa Pilipinas kaysa native Indians. Marami pang mamatay kaysa native Indians. Baka mamatay tayong lahat. Kay 300 million yung namatay sa native Indians. Tayo 110 million lang, more or less. Maski na sabihin natin, 50 million mamatay, malaki na rin yan. Malaki na yan. And that is possible if you continue to sleep under the mosquito net and take care of yourself, forgetting about the country. Ang Pilipinas, kung talagang mahal mo, mawala rin, mamatay. Sasama sa'yo ang kamatayan. Kaya nga ako nagmakaawa sa'yo. Being a citizen of this country, please, sign this. Sign this. All that you have to do is sign. Get a ball pen or a fountain pen, sign it, and the moment you sign the last letter, E. Duterte, the moment that is written, COVID will be free. I mean, the Philippines will be COVID-free for a long, long time in the Philippines. Remember that. And kayong mga Filipino na kinig sa akin, especially yung sa military, isipin ninyo na yung perang binigay sa inyo, maski marami ang binigay ni Digong at China sa inyo, mawawala rin yan. Ang manatili dito yung bansa natin. Pero hindi na maging bansa natin ito kung China na mag-take over. At kayo, kawawa kayo. Baka hindi, dahil mamatay rin kayo. Yung mga anak ninyo, yung mga apo ninyo, kayong mga general, kinausap ko kayo. Yung mga apo ninyo, wala kayong iniisip kundi paligayahin ng China. Ibigay yung Changi Point. Magtayo ng telco doon sa mga military camps. Ano-ano yung ginagawa niyong kabulastugan na hindi maganda para sa mga Filipino. I'm asking you to please help. Come forward and try to implement. Help me implement. Ang gusto ko lang na samahan ninyo ko kung ayaw talaga ni Mayor Duterte na i-implement yung one island quarantine policy ko na sinusunod ng maraming bansa. Samahan niyo ako, punta sa Malacanang. I will assume full-fledged presidency and I assure you, in less than 7 days, there will be no COVID in major areas in the Philippines. 99.99% of the Philippines will be COVID-free, will be business as usual. Yung 1% of 1%, doon sa Palawan or Marinduque, depending on what is practical. But I would prefer that either Palawan or Marinduque or both shall be used as quarantine areas because there are airports there and there are existing hospitals. I don't think I have to prolong this message. I just want to repeat that we have about 312 airplanes, and it would take about 5 to 6 trips for all the COVID patients to be taken to Marinduque and to Palawan. We have about 1.2 million private cars, 21,000 taxis, 140,000 buses. This can be used because public safety requires or demands used to transport our COVID-afflicted patients to the airport and from the airport to either Marinduque or to Palawan. So we have enough transportation and we have extra yung shipping lines which is capable of carrying 600,000 passengers. One trip, 600,000 passengers. There are 202 big ships in the Philippines, 202. Mga Roro, mga fast seacraft, ano yung mga ferries, fast ferries, madali yan. So we have 3. We can do it. We can transport our patients by air, by land, and by sea. Yun. Kaya, it is a good idea, which is practical, and because it is practical, it can be achieved. And the only thing that is lacking now is the signature of Duterte in this decree. Yun lang, signature. Sign it. Sign it, and we will be COVID-free. Sign it. To repeat, about 400,000 have died already. And about 600,000 are afflicted with COVID. 400,000 died, more or less. About 326,000 coronavirus cases. And many have died. About 5,000 died out of 326,000. Matigil natin ito, Mayor Duterte, kung pipirmahan mo, if you have the heart to sign your signature at this point of history, your signature can save thousands, if not millions. Hindi ko patagalan ito. Dahil mga 20 minutes na ako nagsalita. Bago lang akong nanggaling sa hospital. And sabihin ko lang ulit, kayo nakinig sa akin, kamong namati na ako. Tabangi ko, i-share. I want millions of share sa itong executive decree nito. Millions of share. Yun lang magawa ninyo. Kasi makita ni Rodi Duterte everywhere sa Facebook, itong decree na ito, mapipilitan siya, mapahiya siya. Si permahan niya. Pag pinirmahan ni Duterte ang decree, bingo, panalo tayo. Kasi pinirmahan niya. Itong tao na ito talagang importante yung signature niya. Pero kung gawin niyo ako ng full-fledged president, wala kayong problema. Pipirmahan ko yan. Wala problema, ginawa ko nga yan. And so again, please, i-viral ninyo ito. I-upload ninyo sa YouTube, sa Facebook, i-viral. Ibig sabihin, kayo ay naniwala sa ginagawa ko. Naniwala kayo at suportado niyo ako. At kung maaari, kayong andyan sa military, sa Philippine National Police, sa military, mga generals, mga colonels, mga majors, mga captains, tulungan niyo ako. Na yung mga plano sa gobyerno na hindi naman maganda ay matigil. Tulad yung Sangli Point na gawin lang private airport. Tulad yung maglagay silang mga telco doon na telecommunications company sa mga military camps. Marami pa na gusto kong tulungan niyo ako. Kasi kung tulungan niyo ako, I promise you, these Philippines, the Republic of the Philippines, will never ever be the same again. The Philippines will never ever be the same again. It will be the Philippines of our dreams. It will be a Philippines that will reflect the hopes and visions of our ancestors and the dreams of our young people. It will be your Philippines, a Philippines that you can be proud of. I think I have said enough. I want you to join me in a prayer. Our Father who lives everywhere and beyond compare, hallowed be your name. Thank you for showing us that our mission is to become as pure and perfect as you are, and justly rule the moons, the suns, and the sea of awesome stars in the realm and radiance of your love. Your kingdom is boundless, ageless, and shapeless, wherein and wherefore everything, living or non-living, seen or unseen, is equally seated at the very center of a loving and living universe. Give us this day the capacity to produce life's energy and daily bread. Make us learn purifying and healing lessons from our failings and misdeeds. Give us the patience and the strength to support those who are in need. Kindly care for those who are sick and dying, in pain and hopelessness, and help us share enough food with the suffering masses, forlorn and forgotten, even by their loved ones, from whom they expect some words of hope and consolation. Grant us the wisdom to embrace the virtues of bravery, kindness, and righteousness, and therefore emulate your majesty and holiness. Keep and protect us in the warmth of your sacred heart and consciousness. Then lead us from the depths and deepening darkness of ignorance and greed to the sunlit plain of paradise, justice, and eternal bliss. For yours alone is the supreme power, the grandeur, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace forever and ever. Amen. Yun mga kaibigan ko, maraming salamat sa inyong pagpakinig. Dagan salamat sa inyong pagpaminaw. Ini again, si Ragen Velez Pamatong, President, Republic of the Philippines. Thank you and good night.